Question: have you looked up at the sky lately and seen those bizarre white streaks or trails, usually starting small, yet often ending up massive, while extending as far as the eye can see? If you haven't seen them, then obviously you have not been looking up. In case you didn't know, they are not natural clouds. Far from it. No. Top scientists are now saying they are highly unnatural white streaks, often littering the entire sky. What in the world could these be? Many people around America are now asking, and we pray you are one of them, since they are a great cause of concern, especially to you and your entire family's health. You heard that correctly. Health, from young to elderly. Stay tuned and you'll learn why. Since modern jet engines are designed not to produce any zero vapor trails, what possibly could these mysterious sky trails be? But even more baffling, these often massive trails are coming from, guess where? They're coming out of aircraft, which scientifically shouldn't happen, as already stated, considering the design of modern jet engines. Furthermore, the vast majority of these sky trails are coming from military aircraft, verified by photographic evidence, and so much more. And they fly at lower altitudes than commercial aircraft. These spraying planes are only some 20 to 25,000 feet. For those of us who've watched and flown aircraft for over 50 years, we've never seen anything like these more recent and ominous trails covering the skies over all America, from California to Maine. You heard that right, over the entire USA, and even over Hawaii, which we'll find out in a few minutes. Once again, what could possibly be making these highly unnatural paths across the sky that begin narrow as they leave the aircraft, but then expand widely, often up to 10 times as much over the next hour or so? To begin understanding this alarming issue, and to see what these diabolical and white sky trails look like, first go to the highly revealing website, geoengineeringwatch.org. Once again, that's geoengineeringwatch.org. So you can spell it with a G-E-O, then engineering, then watch, like what you might have on your wrist, .org. It's the world's top website for exposing this troubling reality, and it's something we all need to grasp immediately while we still have time, our health, and our lives. Yes, it's that serious, and you'll soon understand why. If we get time in this short broadcast, we'll hear a short portion of a powerful documentary on this alarming subject of spraying our skies with toxic chemicals, with people deeply involved in this research, including whistleblowers, trying to warn us all. Whether you already know this or not, this spraying has already done great damage to all life below, not only to plants, trees, and wildlife, but people all across America. But before we hear from these people, let's get back to these disturbing, alarming white streaks or trails that often do not disappear for hours. And when they do, they just continue to spread out across the entire sky, turning the blue skies gray or a dull white. You heard that right. These are anything but an airplane's natural vapor or condensation trails that in the past decades quickly and innocently dissipated and were very short. Once again, in case you didn't know, modern jet engines are designed to leave no vapor or condensation trails. Do we all understand that? Furthermore, numerous photographs and film have been taken proving that these trails are coming from nozzles, not engines, mounted on these aircraft. Something is being sprayed, and deliberately. There is no debate about this reality as it's now being exposed. Even the government is reluctantly beginning to admit this. Lately they've been speaking of the need for dimming the sun. Say what? Dimming the sun? Of course, what they tell us is never the whole story, much less 1/10 of the story, and more on that later. So what could they be spraying on us nearly every day of the week? Does this alarm you? It should. And while we're at it, did you know that hundreds of patents, worldwide patents, have been granted for this kind of spraying on all life below, and without our permission, the public? Did you get that? Without our permission? Folks, this isn't theory, much less conspiracy theory. No, it's as real as the nose on your face. For the self-absorbed who haven't been looking up, if you knew what they were up to and what's recently been discovered, you'd be protesting in the streets and at the State House and legislature this whole next week. But let's keep going to uncover this mess. Fortunately, some politicians are finally taking this seriously, as life below these sky trails is dying, as already stated, for all to see. From forests, wildlife, including birds and insects, those things that help life to continue, all life forms, and yes, even human life. Presidential candidate Robert Kennedy is a rare and brave politician now sounding the alarm, but most others are still afraid or unwilling to speak out for selfish reasons, including financial. Many have been bought off not to speak. Yet, fortunately, some military personnel are slowly beginning to come forward with alarming, sobering information, including some retired generals. Yet they also risk great personal harm from the deep state and other nefarious authorities. Not surprisingly, all, if not nearly all, of the U.S. pilots dumping this on us don't even know what they are spraying. They are just blindly obeying orders. They've deceptively been told by their superiors that it'll all be good, what they are doing, and yet they are all under military gag orders not to tell anyone they are spraying anything. This has all been verified. These pilots know they are spraying massive amounts of something, but to keep their paychecks coming and not to get in major trouble with their superiors, they willingly and sinfully keep their heads in the sand. But with those of us who watch the skies more than our cell phones, some of these typically long sky trails have begun to get shorter and narrower lately, since they've become so obvious to those awakened in the viewing public below. And not surprisingly, the infamous deep state has been reported to be doing this diabolical spraying, and they are now trying to make it look less obvious. They are even shortening some of these chemtrails to 500 yards, rather than the previous 5 miles. Yet long trails are still there, but not as often as they once were, even 3 months ago. Also, some chemtrails are not recognizable anymore, since they were originally sprayed 100 or so miles away, and a few hours later they've blown overhead, having already spread out from thin white streaks to off-white ugly clouds, lessening the once pristine blue skies overhead. But let's all remember, once again, absolutely no trails, vapor trails of anything, should be coming from jets in our skies, especially from military aircraft only 4 to 5 miles high. Their jet engines don't naturally emit vapor trails, so instead they are obviously spraying very toxic material to create the sky whitening, but eventual darkening. Once again, go to the website of geoengineeringwatch.org, and it'll bring you up to date real fast on this alarming spraying. And by the way, they have audio weekly updates, either by radio stations now across America for 1 hour, or they'll send you by email that same radio broadcast. As of now, it can still be heard on YouTube. Also at their website, please watch the documentary The Dimming. That is The Dimming, D-I-M-M-I-N-G, since it explains fully and in detail the little of what we can say in our few minutes today. Now, some may be asking, where's the proof that there may be something sinister to these sky trails? Well, for those who care about their own lives, and others, hopefully, once again go first to geoengineeringwatch.org. They provide overwhelming evidence. And watch the documentary, as already stated, The Dimming. Second, many recent chemtrail sky tests have been done with testing aircraft flying just below the planes dumping these chemicals. And guess what? Many toxic elements are showing up in massive quantities from these tests when none should be detected. That is, without these massive sky trails. Some of these toxins include aluminum, barium, strontium, polymer fibers, graphene, yes, super toxic metallic graphene, and numerous other highly deadly chemicals, broken down into exceptionally small nanoparticles, too small individually for the human eye to see. That is, without magnification. Of course, these tests are not being done by our government, but instead by honest, non-government entities and people, since it appears that a very wicked division within the federal government is deliberately behind this environmental assault of the masses. They obviously want no testing of these sprayed toxins, nor for the results to get to us, the public. Yet thankfully, the word is starting to get out, but not fast enough. So we, the concerned public, need to care enough to demand immediate state and federal congressional hearings on this diabolical dumping. These chemtrails do more than harm all life below. They also dramatically can affect the weather. You heard that right. They can create hail, massive hail, like grapefruit size, never seen before except recently like in Colorado. They can also create out-of-control wildfires like Maui, Paradise, California, and even the Canadian wildfires that have now scorched over 40 million acres. These weather modification techniques also create massive high-pressure regions and heat domes, where temperatures go through the roof, setting all-time records like this summer. Folks, this is no conspiracy theory. No, it's being proven by top scientists around the globe and here in the States. But make sure you understand this. This has nothing to do with the climate change activists, where they manipulate and fabricate weather data to push their ultra-leftist political agenda. They want to control the world and everything you and we do. Not so the case of these honest people fighting against geoengineering and weather warfare pushers and advocates like the present government, Bill Gates, the World Economic Forum, and other New World Order advocates and tyrants. So you don't believe these people and groups are doing this? Then listen to this short clip from a CNBC news program.
Meanwhile, Bill Gates is backing the first high-altitude experiment of one radical climate change solution, creating a massive chemical cloud that could cool the Earth. It's called solar geoengineering, and it's highly controversial.
So here we just heard from the ultra-left, socialist media source CNBC saying Bill Gates and the globalists are creating a massive chemical cloud to cool the Earth, called geoengineering. Do you now believe it? Though there's so much more evidence, and some of that we'll be hearing. Now, speaking of Bill Gates, here's a recent headline from the news. Bill Gates funds plan to chop, bury trees to fight climate change. It writes Bill Gates is funding a scheme to cut down and bury trees to reduce global warming. Gates has recently injected millions of dollars in seed funding to a company that wants to cut down 70 million acres of forest. Did you hear that? 70 million acres of forest, all to fight climate change. What kind of insanity is that? That's the fastest way to create climate disaster. And of course, it's Gates who wants us all to eat no meat, but rather insects, as he started a company with fake meat. But let's move on from his insanity and wickedness. And in case you didn't know, these global elites, by their own admittance, They soon want the world's population under 1 billion people, eradicating some 13 out of 14 people. They've stated this many, many times. It's doubtful any of us will be among these 1 in 14 to survive their satanic ways, unless we do something about it. Oh, and how about this recent headline? Vice President Kamala Harris says we need to invest in clean energy and electric vehicles and reduce the population. That way our children can breathe clean air and drink clean water. Say what? Sorry, Kamala. That's not the way ethical, moral Bible believers deal with human problems. We fight for the sanctity of life, not against it. Now, before moving on, we just cited the unbelievable, horrific Maui fire. Now, to add more fuel to that fire, according to numerous credible sources, there has been a massive cover-up of what's really happened in Maui. If you ever listen to something beyond the propaganda of the mainstream news, thousands of those who survived the Maui carnage have been screaming at the top of their lungs. Even many weeks after this tragedy, they say the government has done nothing to help them with their real needs. More than that, they say the government has been fighting against them. This will likely turn out to be one of the greatest cover-ups of all time. But what else about Maui is seemingly unbelievable? That's an easy one. In light of our main subject today, for sure, Maui, that gorgeous and tiny island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, would never have to worry about chemtrails, right? Wrong. No way, we say. No way chemtrails over Maui. Well, catch this headline from the recent news. The Maui chemtrails fight. The article goes on. For more than a decade, the hardy people of Maui fought to bring clear blue skies back to the tropical paradise by banning the geoengineering of their skies. In 2011, 12 years ago, 13 years ago, a host of initiatives from the Maui Clean Sky Ordinance to the Maui Sky Watch, they tried in vain to stop the spraying of the metals nanodust over the Hawaiian chain of islands. But the military contracted planes continued to rain the metal shavings down on the island that hosts a pair of extinct volcanoes. The three main elements used in the chemtrail cocktails included barium, which we've already cited, aluminum, and strontium-90, a radioactive isotope. We didn't tell you that that was radioactive. In 2015, Maui resident Michael Murphy got together with the mayor to stop the aerosol spraying with the bill Blue Sky Ordinance that sought to ban geoengineering in the skies. And guess what? All such efforts, it says here, whether in Hawaii or mainline United States, never succeeded in stopping the weather modification, the strategic aerosol injection, SAI, and the solar radiation management, SRM, programs that account for many of the chemtrail planes in the sky, but not all of them. And the article continues, on the surface, the government and its captured agencies run the cover story of climate change, but the spraying of these chemtrails around the world serves a different purpose. Chemtrails dry out trees, bushes, and vegetation while making the land arid and poisoning the air and water. The article continues, but this sums it up for our purposes. But can you fathom that? Even the Hawaiian Islands have been riddled with chemtrails? That's virtually beyond comprehension, especially for sane people. But so sadly, most of those in control nowadays are anything but sane, caring people. It's all about undemocratic ways, money, control, and more control. And how about this headline posted just today? Maui officials reveal cause of the devastating wildfires, blowing up the climate change narrative. And it goes on to report how the fires were caused by downed power lines and failures by the state's main power utility company. Or how about this headline just posted? Greece arrests 79 arsonists for fires claimed to be caused by climate change. And it says, over the past week, more than 200 wildfires in Greece have destroyed 130,000 hectares of land so far. It goes on and reports on that. Over 500 fires in Greece this summer. And now police have arrested 79 individuals on charges of arson. And it continues, politicians in the U.S. and EU have been quick to blame recent wildfires in Hawaii, Italy, Canada, and Spain on climate change before official causes were even determined. But let's not get off track here. This is not about climate change, but it's about intentional climate destruction and humanity destruction. Sure, we humans have done much to pollute and abuse the earth, and we should all try to curtail that. But the greatest harm, by far, that has and is being done is by geoengineering chemtrails and other weather warfare technologies. We can last for decades more from the normal pollution, but geoengineering will soon end life for nearly all of us. How long? We're sadly talking within a couple of years or sooner. But back to these modern trails that are normally massive while covering the entire sky and occur nearly every day of the week. They're impossible not to see unless it's a naturally cloudy day or you don't look up at the skies to observe what is there. And did you know that our air conditioners and fans suck it all in? And these nanoparticles damage not only the lungs, but all body parts, including the brain. Just aluminum alone is a major cause of Alzheimer's. And if you have children or you are elderly, you've got to consider this. This is no conspiracy theory, folks. Unfortunately, it's very troubling and unpleasant reality. Even our present government is finally beginning to admit it. So this most critical issue raises two immediate and concerning questions for all of us. Can you think what they might be? Well, number one, just what are these diabolical-looking sky trails? But much more importantly than that, what harm are they causing to all life below? From plants and trees to insects, bees, fish, all animals, and finally, yes, us, as humans. Common sense alone says these obvious and manufactured sky trails cannot be healthy for any and all life below. Does that make sense? Shouldn't red flags be frantically waving by every citizen who'd like to live, including their children and grandchildren, a normal and healthy lifetime? Last we checked, all our neighbors want nothing toxic dropped on them, especially when it is deliberate and without their permission. Where are the congressional hearings and media bringing this to our attention? Sadly, they've been told and paid not to report it. You heard that correctly. Did you know that even the National Weather Service, meteorologists, and others are under federal gag orders not to talk about these chemtrails? You heard that right. They are not allowed to discuss it. Go to geoengineeringwatch.org and you can see a copy of the illegal gag order there. Yet if anything is ever said by these people under the gag order, it's to say there's nothing to these innocent sky trails. But this can easily be proven that they are lying, like so many other lies we're told daily by our national media. With a federal government that now classifies mothers and parents as domestic terrorists since they desire a say in their children's education, and now Catholics have been added to that terrorist list. You think the government is honest with what they're telling us and the national media that they've bought and paid for? Look at our open borders. The government is obviously and deliberately trying to destroy the U.S. and its Constitution, which once protected us. Millions of illegals, including Chinese and terrorists from other communist countries, are streaming across the southern border. They're nearly all of military age, prepared to set up sleeper cells anywhere throughout America. When will we all wake up? After we've lost our freedoms and our country no longer is America? Sadly, that's the way it's going. Too many Americans primarily interested in the worldly matters of life, not the spiritual or even striving for individual freedoms, which so many brave Americans have died for since our country's founding. To think they died for where our country is now. For what most Americans think is now important, they've gave their blood. They're thrashing in their graves, trying to get out and scream, "Wake up, you blinded and me first people, wake up before you join us in the grave." But no, we just go on with our godless ways. But back to how the government is paying the leftist media to spread its propaganda. Did you know that documents recently gathered through a Freedom of Information Act request discovered that the Biden administration paid nearly the entire corporate media, a total of around $1 billion, as part of a huge campaign to push only positive coverage about the highly controversial COVID vaccines? Did you hear that? Is that the kind of government you want? That they pay the media $1 billion to lie for them? Yes, the government paid all the top and corrupt media sources, including the 3 major TV networks, $1 billion to lie about the COVID vaccines. This was recently proven true from recovered documents. Plus, they colluded with the large social media firms, Facebook and other corrupt companies, to censor all opposing views, including their overwhelming scientific evidence of COVID vaccine harms. Did you know that? Also, did you see the Supreme Court just ruled against the censoring corrupt government for this Orwellian overreach? They deliberately violated the First Amendment, our right to free speech. It's the number one citizen's right of Americans, in case you didn't know. Did our government care? Tragically, no. And yes, tons of new evidence is coming out daily related to the damaging effects of the COVID vaccine, even from the dishonest CDC or Center for Disease Control, despite their efforts to hide this information. For example, here's a recent national newspaper article which exposed their lies. It says, on Monday we got a bombshell. New documents indicate the entire justification for vaccine mandates was based on a falsehood, and that public health officials knew it. Emails obtained through a Freedom of Information Act request show that CDC Director Rochelle Walensky and former NIH Director Francis Collins were aware of and discussed breakthrough cases of COVID in January of 2021, right when the vaccines became widely available. However, in public, Walensky was saying something quite different. 2 months after previously discussing this private data, publicly she said vaccinated people don't carry the virus and don't get sick. We now know that was not true and that Walensky knew herself that it wasn't true. Folks, that has been proven. The article continues that this professor from Stanford University called the revelation stunning. He pointed out that despite this knowledge, they continued to push the vax mandates anyway. The article continues with more condemnation, but we're out of time. The next and final program will highlight key segments from a couple of very powerful documentaries where we'll hear from whistleblowers, scientists, and other highly knowledgeable people trying to warn us all, especially those of us with our heads in the sand. So until then, look above daily, multiple times. Tell and warn others of this life-ending subject. Get educated. Contact leaders, politicians, neighbors, everyone who wants to live beyond 2025. Each day counts. Sadly, many good guys scientists believe it's too late. The deep state has caused so much environmental damage it can't be repaired. Nonetheless, we must never give up the fight. Folks, forget your retirement or retirement account or your new car or home. It's all going to be a moot point if we don't stop this immediately. You don't believe it? Check it out, starting with geoengineeringwatch.org. Once again, geoengineeringwatch.org.